to start recording. We've been doing Hilkhot Shabbat, and today we're going to talk about a chapter called Shtifat Kelim V'Nikoy Habayit V'Shulchan, cleaning utensils and cleaning the house and the table and so on. So it says like this: Klei ochel kegon tzalachot sakinim mazlegot shenitlach lechu. So we're going to start by talking about, again, we're talking about Shabbat. If you have food utensils like plates, knives, forks, and so on that got dirty, mutar l'shotfam l'tzorech hayom. You're allowed to clean them for the purpose of using them that day. Kegon shnishar lo adayin suda lechol. For example, maybe you had them in the morning for breakfast, and you're going to need them for lunch. But on Suda Shlishit, so this happens a lot, where Saturday afternoon, where maybe you or your wife take out some food and you sit down at the table and you eat. And now, depending on the time of year, it's an hour before sunset or something along those lines, and you're not eating again. So in that instance, really, that's not a time to start cleaning the utensils. It's not because the purpose of cleaning the utensils would not be for that day. The cleaning of the utensils would be for the next time you use them, which would not be on Shabbat. He says that's not true, however, with utensils that you would drink from. So cups, mugs, and so on, because drinking, if you drank an hour before Shabbat ended, you may drink again and you may use that cup. So therefore, since drinking, it's always a time for drinking, even, you'll walk over to the cabinet on a moment's notice and pull out a cup and drink. So therefore, you're always able to clean cups on Shabbat. However, if you're certain that you're not going to drink again, I'm not sure how you would be certain, but if you were certain you're not going to drink again on Shabbat, so then the same rule would apply. So the general concept is that you can clean the utensils if you're going to use them on that day. But if you're not going to use them on that day, and the general use of that utensil is kind of the way that you could tell whether or not you're going to or not, so then you would not wash them. So again, this is all going back on the basic principle of on Shabbat, we don't plan for the next day. We don't do things that are going to set ourselves up for the next day. So we talked about similar items before, like packing suitcases and so on. So I hope you get the general gist of what we have here. Okay. Let's say after he ate Suda Shlishit, Joe, I'm just going to mute you because I'm getting interference. You can unmute yourselves, I think, if you need to. If you want to ask a question, I think everyone is able to unmute themselves. So I muted everyone, but feel free to unmute yourself. I think you should be able to.
Rabbi,
yes.
If we're moving on from this sort of semi-topic question, is this: if you have other utensils that you could use and you didn't have to use that particular utensil again.
Right. So it's a great question, and I actually figured you were going to get that, and I think he does get there. So in our homes where we have, forks and knives, the truth in my house, because how many kids we have, I don't know if you're experiencing this, but my wife, we're not used to having all 8 of us all at home for as much as we have. And so we're running through our utensils much faster than we normally do. But very frequently, many of us have utensils that we could host, many people. So the truth is, if you let's talk about cups, right? If you have a cabinet full of cups and you're not going to need that cup now, and would you need a cup later? So there's plenty to take from. So then, you probably shouldn't be washing that either. You should walk it over to the sink, leave it in the sink for after Shabbat, and that would make sense. So good question, definitely. So he says like this: Let's say you ate Suda Shlishit, I don't know, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and now you decided you got hungry, you want to eat again. נכון להחמיר שלא לשטוף את הכלים, מפני שיש אומרים שלא התירם להדיח אלא לצורך 3 סעודות ולא יותר, ומכל מקום, אם אין לו כלים אחרים וזקוק הוא להם לאחר סעודה שלישית, יש להקל לשטפן. So the case that he's talking about is, more like a summer case, but I guess it could be a Shabbat case, a winter case as well. He says some opinions hold that you can only wash utensils for 3 meals, because that's the normal way that you have Shabbat. However, the way that we have Shabbat is we have more than 3 meals. So I'll give you an example. The first meal is always on Friday night. So let's take that one out of the equation. Right? And Shabbat morning, let's say you went to first minyan, right? So your first meal could be at as early as 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning. So you eat 9:30 in the morning. And now, so that's your Su'udah Shenit, right? That's your second meal. Now, when you eat Su'udah Shlishit, you may go home and eat Su'udah Shlishit at 12:30, 1 o'clock, right? So that's Su'udah Shlishit. And that counts. And for people who do first minyan, you're done. You don't need to have Su'udah Shlishit after that. Especially if you had bread at the breakfast meal.
Wow.
Now, you could certainly get into a situation, given that you've eaten lunch at 12, 1 o'clock, and that is considered Su'udah Shlishit, you could certainly consider a situation where you have a 4th meal, or maybe even a 5th meal in the summer, right? Because if you think about it, right, if you eat lunch at 12, 1 o'clock, how many times in the summer do you then go and eat another meal at 5, 6 o'clock, which is still well within the Shabbat range? And you might even eat a little more after that. So he says, so this presents a problem because there's differences of opinion as to what I can wash my utensils for. Can I wash them only for the 3 meals, or can I wash them for any time I might eat? So we're going to rely on the lenient opinion and say that any time you might eat. So therefore, you could continue to wash the utensils, but you should know that there are opinions that say, no, only for 3 meals. After that, it's not necessary to eat. So it's out there. It's something to think about. It's for practicality. We'll say you could continue to wash the utensils, but understand that there's multiple sides to this this type of idea and this type of thinking, and that will come into play in a little bit. Okay,
Rabbi, not to
please.
digress,
Okay.
but are we saying that Su'udah Shlishit does not have to be necessarily between Mincha and Arbit?
Correct. That is correct. It really. You have to eat 1 meal at night. That's a must. And again, that's under normal circumstances. If God forbid you're sick or in some other way under duress that you can't eat on Friday night, you can't eat on Friday night. And we actually talked about that with Kiddush, where we said that for Kiddush we had mentioned that if you miss Friday night Kiddush, you actually say the version of Friday night during the day, which is 2 berachot and so on. So we actually did talk about that at some other point in time. But just getting back to the concept of Su'udah Shlishit, the idea of Su'udah Shlishit is based on, as the term implies, is based on numbers, not timing. It's not called Su'udat Mincha or something like that. So the idea is to eat the 3 meals when we can eat them, the first at night, the second, the last 2, Su'udat Shenit and Su'udah Shlishit. So those really, it's going to depend on your day. And if you get up early, so yeah, you could certainly have Su'udah Shenit. So again, guys that like to do first minyan, it's very feasible and very possible. If you eat bread at your breakfast, because you should have bread to make it a Su'udah. If you eat bread at your breakfast meal, which is very doable, then your lunchtime meal or your mid-afternoon meal counts as Su'udah Shlishit. And for some people, that's very helpful because a lot of us don't like to have don't like to eat at Su'udah Shlishit times. And so therefore, we can fulfill our obligation and even eating bread, which is something that we want to try and do for the meals, to be able to do it that way. So good. Yeah, keep the questions coming. It's not a digression. It's good. Okay. כלי אוכל שמותר לשטפם לצורך היום, ההיתר הוא אפילו מליל שבת ליום שבת או לסעודה שלישית. So when we're saying that you can clean your utensils, so what we're talking about is even from the night to the day. So very often, at the night, we don't want to leave, in general anyway, people don't want to, and we're going to talk about this as well, people don't want to take what they used at night and leave it in the sink for 24 hours, or something like that till the next Shabbat. So you are allowed to rinse and wash the utensils at night with the idea that you will potentially be using those utensils during the next day. So here's your question, right? And what if you have another set of utensils? He says, so in that instance, really, if you have another set of utensils that you would potentially use the next day, he says, you really may not want to do the cleaning on Friday night, because what ends up happening is you're creating a burden for yourself to do on Shabbat, right? To clean your utensils off could take a half hour. You don't want to spend a half hour cleaning utensils on Shabbat. Use the clean utensils. Now, the truth is, where does this come into play? And something that he's not going to talk about. What about if the next day, Friday night, everyone eats meat, right? But on the next day on Shabbat, very often people eat dairy. So not only do you have an extra set of utensils, you kind of know you're not going to be using the utensils that you set aside, that you used for Friday night. So really, in that instance, I would suggest that we not be cleaning off those utensils. However, I would say that we are able to put it in the, and I think he's going to get to this, but I'll say it now. You are able to take the utensils, put them in the sink or on the kitchen counter or something like that, and have a housekeeper or someone like that clean them off. Because what you're doing there, and this goes into what we talked about when we were talking about non-Jews working for us on Shabbat, you're not telling the person, I need this cleaned right now. You're saying, here, this needs to be cleaned. And the person is basically going to clean it on their own at the earliest convenience, which will work for us. So therefore, that's probably the best thing and probably the most likely thing that happens in our homes. However, we don't always have a housekeeper. Sometimes our children or our wives or ourselves, we like to join in. So we have to keep these things in mind because, again, we want to keep Shabbat, and so be it. I'll just twist it a little bit and now make an opportunity for allowing it. There are times where we can actually turn this into a less about the dishes and more about the family. And it could be family time in the sense of the family is undergoing a kind of a project, if you will, in that, we're all going to clean off the table and we're all going to help mom out or keep things going. So in that instance, it has its own purpose. And I think in that sense, there's what to rely upon and use it as a positive because you're building a few different pieces together. But I think that's good. And if you ask me, is it better to go and have the whole family put the house in order so that the house looks good on Shabbat, on Friday night, or go and watch TV in the living room? I'd say this is probably better, more constructive and more Shabbat purposeful, because we want to keep in mind the theme of Shabbat is always, or frequently at least, the keeping of Shabbat together. And if that helps us do that, then that might be something to consider. He adds here one other point. He says, he says another point, which is very frequently true on Shabbat. He says, if this is your nice utensils, if these are your good things, he says to leave them out dirty and so on, that's going to ruin them. And you don't want to ruin the utensils. So therefore, for that purpose, also, you can wash them off. So very often we're using our fine china and nice stemware, and to let them sit with dirt and oil and residue on them, it can become very hard to clean them off 24 hours later. And certainly if you do that week in, week out, it's going to ruin the utensils. So in that instance as well, it's fine to clean off the utensils, and that's considered as cleaning them for that day. So that's something else. One other point, and then we'll wrap with this. It says, Kelim shenitlachtlechu v'yesh chashash malim. Another concern that sometimes we have is for some kind of pests or insects, right? If you leave dirty utensils in the sink or on the table or something like that, you may be worried about ants, roaches, rodents, and things like that. Or if it's a silver utensil, where if you leave it out, it's gonna ruin. You could definitely rinse them off, even if you're not planning on using them. So just to quickly recap, the basic premise that we have is that we don't want to be washing the utensils that we use unless we're going to be using them again on Shabbat, because of this general idea that we have that we shouldn't be preparing for post-Shabbat while on Shabbat. However, when we look at the practicalities, there's lots of instances where we are able to clean our utensils off, either because we're going to use those utensils that day, because it'll ruin the area that we have on Shabbat, whether with smell, with dirt, with rodents, and so on, or because it'll ruin the utensils themselves. However, we should nevertheless keep the things in mind. And perhaps if we're able to set it up, the best thing is to leave it in a place where someone who is not keeping Shabbat, one of our non-Jewish workers or something like that, gets the idea and knows that they have to clean it at some point, and then they clean it. So that's the quick recap of everything that we did today. And good to see everybody, and hopefully we'll keep doing some of this